Okay, at the end of this chapter, what I'd like you to do is to write up the set of clues. You can either do them as a poster or you can do them as a leaflet. It's up to you. So you need to listen carefully and you need to look at the text. And then when you see the set of clues and hear the set of clues, I want you to write them up and design a sort of clue sheet of your own. Okay, 34. Chapter 34, here we go. Augustus Finch and Mary Everett. Seeing them together, Wild Boy didn't know who presented the more grotesque figure. Finch, with his black and white hair and his scars all shiny across his face, or Mary Everett, who watched him from behind her thick white makeup. They would have made a fine couple. Both, he thought, were quite capable of murder. Mary Everett lit a cigar and blew smoke into the face of her gentleman guard. If she was worried by the man's pistol, she didn't show it. "So, freak," she growled at Wild Boy. "You're in charge now, are you? You going to tell us what this is about?" Wild Boy stepped closer, trying not to show his fear. He looked the ringmaster straight in the eye. "You know what this is about," he said. "It's murder." "Ha! You ain't pinning no murder on me." "You pinned one on me," Wild Boy said. "That was showman's law. It was right and proper." Showman's law, Wild Boy thought. It was her twisted idea of justice that had let the killer escape undetected until now. He brought out the list of clues. The page trembled in his hands as he read it again, silently to himself, making absolutely certain that he'd got this right. Clues so far. 1. Killer walks funny. 2. Killer knew the professor. 3. Marks in mud by professor's body from a cane. 4. Marks on killer's hood. Lives in place with low ceiling. 5. Hair by doctor's body, silver or white. 6. Killer can jump like me. 7. He can disappear. Or it might be a trick. "Master Wild?" Sir Oswald asked. Wild Boy's friend sat on the stumps of his thighs at the side of the ring, watching with worried eyes. "What is that paper?" "That's Clarissa's list." "Clarissa? Your daughter, the one you set the dogs after, remember? She sided with a freak." "No, she sided with a friend." The ringmaster snorted. "So you really think it was me that done them killings?" Marcus limped forward on his cane. "You are a suspect. After all, you knew about Wild Boy's abilities." "When I was in that cage," Wild Boy explained, "you said to me, 'I'm told you can see things no one else can.'" "Yeah, that all the evidence you got?" Mary Everett asked. "Nah, I got plenty more. See them marks in the sawdust? You didn't know they was from your crutch. You might think they looked like marks from a cane, and you were an acrobat once, weren't you? You're trained to make high jumps, just like the one the killer made from the doctor's house." Wild Boy stepped so close that her cigar smoke tickled the hair on his face. "Why'd you hide your face?" he said. "Say that again, freak." "Ever since Clarissa's father left, you've hidden your face behind that powder. Is it because you blame yourself or you hate yourself? Maybe you wish you were someone else, the sort of person your husband wouldn't have run away from. Maybe you used to drink with Professor Wollstonecraft, and maybe you discovered his plans to build a new machine." Mary Everett looked at the ground. Flakes of makeup fell from her face. When she spoke again, her voice had lost its venom. It was soft, distant. I don't know what you're talking about." Wild Boy wondered if buried somewhere beneath the makeup was the mother Clarissa had once loved. "What happened to you?" he said. "Why do you hate Clarissa so much?" The ringmaster looked up, and now her eyes burned like hot coals. "She sided against me. She sided with him. She sided with her father. You see her again, freak? You tell her that. You tell her I ain't her mother no more." Excuse me. She flicked her cigar at him, and the ash burned the hair on his face. Wild Boy staggered back, but resisted the urge to fight. He had to stay focused on the killer. Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. "What about Finch?" This whole time, Augustus Finch hadn't said a word. He just stared at Wild Boy, still running a finger over his longest scar, but now finally spoke. "Yeah, what about me?" There's evidence against you and all, Wild Boy said, holding the showman's glare. That air at the doctor's house. Maybe it was White. The killer has a funny walk, and you've been limping ever since I cut your foot, and you got hobnails on your boots. They could look like cane marks on the ground, and you would have known about my skill. Maybe from when you heard me and Sir Oswald talking. Maybe you're the murderer. One of the gentlemen raised his pistol, warning the showman to stay put. But Wild Boy knew whatever a gun wouldn't stop Augustus Finch when his blood was up. So what happened next came as little surprise. Finch pulled the knife from inside his waistcoat. I'll show you, ugly mutt, he spat. He rushed forward and lunged at Wild Boy. But before the showman had taken 3 steps, Marcus lashed out with his sword. The gentleman was so fast that even Wild Boy's quick eyes saw only a blur of metal and a spurt of blood. Finch fell back with a cry. The sword was speckled crimson. A new cut had opened his cheek, a bloody, dripping letter G. Sir Oswald rushed forward on his hands and snatched away the showman's knife. Master Wild, are you hurt? Wild Boy looked at Sir Oswald and slowly shook his head. Marcus wiped his sword with his handkerchief. You were right, he said to Wild Boy. He did attack. He stood over the wounded showman and slid his sword back into its cane. Augustus Tiberius Finch, Marcus said. You were named after Roman emperors. Your father must have had high expectations of you. Alas, he could not see past the birthmark that covered your cheek. Ever since, you have tried to hide it, picking fights to add new scars to your face. One might say that you have scratched away your past. I wonder, do you dream of being the sort of man of whom your father would have approved? Do you, too, dream of being someone else? Is that why you wanted the machine? Wild Boy expected the showman to fight back, but instead Finch curled up tighter in the sawdust, hiding his face in his bloodied hands. No, he whimpered, and then he started to cry. Despite everything, Wild Boy felt sorry for him. Finch's life too had been defined by the way he looked. Until now, Wild Boy had never realised what a tragic man it had made him. But there was someone else Wild Boy needed to speak to. And what about you? He said, Marcus Bishop. Marcus's single eye turned to him curiously. Me? Again? There's as much evidence against you as anyone else. The cane marks, the air, the walk, the way the killer limped, and that jump from the doctor's window. That's possible if you're drugged upon laudanum and don't feel pain. Except, of course, that I was beside you when the killer took Miss Everett. So maybe you were in it with another of these gentlemen, Wild Boy said. Maybe you set it all up, created a killer so you could steal the machine's crown without anyone else knowing. And my motive? Your eye and your knee. I see how much pain they give you. Maybe you wanted a new body, or maybe it's about money. You were going to sell the machine for the highest offer. A traitor? Marcus said. Now that is cruel. So you think it is me? For a long moment, Wild Boy looked at him. Then he turned away. Nah, he said, you ain't the killer. Then who is Wild Boy? Time is running out for Miss Everett. Wild Boy breathed in deeply, trying to calm himself. He wished he'd got this wrong. He wished there was another solution. But he was certain that he was right. I almost didn't work it out, he said. There was one clue that got me. The killer's disappearing act in that alley. But once I solved that, everything else made sense. How the hooded man walked, the marks in the mud, that silver hair. In that alley, Clarissa kept saying the hooded man had vanished. But that ain't possible. And there were no secret doors, nor drains neither. The killers must have been hiding, but there was nowhere to hide. There was just them rats and them boxes. And no one could have hidden in a box. Not unless they were really small. Someone like a boy or a girl. Wild Boy's big green eyes were filled with sadness as he turned to face the killer. Or maybe if they had no legs, he said. Ain't that right, Sir Oswald? Okay, so just do me a version of the clues, please. Anyway you like, as I said, as a poster. It's entirely up to you. Thank you.